Content on a law firm's website is one of the most important things. Think about it this way. Content on the website is your expertise packaged into written word and published on your website for everyone to see. Does it need to be perfect? Absolutely not. Does it need to be good, insightful, and useful for the users? Absolutely. But why is it so important for growth of your law firm? Because Google determines whether to send traffic to your website when prospective clients are looking for information about their legal challenges. Google determines whether they should send people to your website or not by seeing how much content you have on your website and whether that content is actually relevant. In fact, Google really cares about you having more and more relevant content on your website than your competitors do. How does Google determine whether you have more and more relevant content on your website? Well, because most people access internet using Google Chrome, Google can measure engagement on all of the websites. And the two primary factors that Google looks at when it determines whether your website has more and more relevant information for any type of search. Let's say I am looking for DUI in Chicago, what to do next, as an example, and I find your website and I find a dozen or so other competing law firms' websites here in my area in Chicago. How would Google determine whether your website has more and more relevant information? It would look at these two factors. Number one, what is an average time that prospective clients or people who visit your website actually spend on your website versus your competitors' websites? Number two, how many pages they would visit on a typical visit. So, for example, if your website gets on average 1 minute and 39 seconds, and people visit 3 pages, but your competitor's website gets 2 minutes and 5 seconds, and people visit 5 pages on average, that will tell Google that your competitor's website has more and more relevant content than your website, and their website will rank higher for that search than your website. In turn, sending more prospective clients to their business. That's why it's so important to have more and more relevant content on your website. But many lawyers wonder, what should I write about on my website, and how do I make sure that the content that we do create is actually going to rank well in search? Well, there are so many different insights that you got to think about. First of all, the main objectives for the content, and there are two. One is to attract prospective clients. Two is engage them and convert them into actual prospects for your law firm. How do you do that? Well, first of all, you create content that people care about. There's a strategy called they ask, you answer. Meaning, you only write content that is of value to your prospective clients. If they're not looking for that content, there's no point in writing. Yet we see so often law firms and or their marketing companies, which should definitely know better, create a ton of content that nobody looks for. It's an absolute waste of time, energy, and money. Don't let that happen to you. And if it already happened to you, make sure to not repeat the mistake. You want to start with only creating content that's actually in demand. How do you know that it's in demand? There are so many different websites, different tools, and we'll link them up down below, that allow you to type in a topic and see just how many searches there are for that topic every single month all across the country. Super important that you start with writing topic that's actually in demand. Second of all, you want to make sure that the content that you create is optimized for search. How do you optimize content for search so that your content, actually your website, ranks well in Google? Well, you start with strategy. What is the strategy? Well, strategic approach when it comes to writing content starts with writing what's in demand and then thinking about, or prior to that actually, thinking about what do you want to dominate? What content do you want to dominate search for in your area? Meaning, let's suppose that you do specialize in DUIs or criminal defense in general, and you want to absolutely dominate search in your geographical market. How do you do that? You become the most relevant resource of information on all things criminal defense in your area. Law firms are, to Google, local service providers. That's why I keep on adding this in your area. As in, you can rank incredibly well for criminal defense in, for example, Omaha, Nebraska, if that's where your law firm is, or Chicago, if this is where your law firm is. I'm sitting in Chicago right now. But you're not going to rank the same way in LA if you do not have an office there. So dominating search results in your geographical area. How do you do that? Well, you start with thinking, what is the pillar cluster network of content going to be? Let me explain what pillar cluster network is. Let's imagine that when you meet with a prospective client for the first time and they ask you a broad question, like, what are we going to do? I got busted for possession, for example. And when you're going to provide them with an answer, as an experienced attorney in the criminal defense space, you could talk about this issue and all of the subtopics for half hour, 45 minutes, maybe an hour or two. You can give them an incredibly comprehensive answer. Now, when we think about that in terms of content and SEO, that answer could be converted into a very long post. Very long post could be 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 10,000 words. This is what we refer to as pillar content. It's very long, it's very comprehensive, and it has a number of subtopics in it. Next, for every subtopic, and we think about subtopics as bullet points in your pillar content, for every subtopic, we create cluster content. Cluster content is much shorter. It could be 800 words, 1,000 words, maybe even 500 words, and it talks about that subtopic. And imagine that you have the pillar, and around the pillar, you have 20 little clusters. All of that is interconnected for the purpose of dominating search space, search results, when people are looking for anything and everything related to criminal defense, for example. Does that require a lot of work to create that content? Absolutely. But once you start dominating search results on those topics, you start getting a lot more traffic. Portion of that traffic converts into prospective clients, aka leads. Portion of those leads converts into actual new business, aka dollars. So that work has a very direct return on investment. So it's definitely worth having that, putting that effort forth. Now, SEO is complex. Making sure that you create content that's actually searchable and optimized for search engines requires more than just knowing how to create pillar and cluster structure. It also requires that for every piece of content that you write, whether it's the pillar or the clusters around it, you start with SEO specifications, meaning for every piece of content, an expert in SEO should be giving you an SEO spec sheet that will show you exactly what to write about. Not every single sentence, but just the headline and subheaders, and the keywords to be used in every piece of content. Why is that important? Because it is possible to put forth all that time and energy creating content, and yet it's not going to rank well. You got to make sure that you do not just write content for the users, you also write it for the search engines in the way that they prefer to see it. It does require technical know-how, so you absolutely must do it. Now, one word of warning. Attorneys, a lot of attorneys are anal retentive, very, very detail-oriented people. They want to make sure that their content is absolutely perfect and that perfection gets in the way of publishing. Never let perfection get in the way of publishing. You want to make sure that your content is great, but it doesn't have to be perfect. For users, for people who come to your website and consume that content, they won't know the difference between a perfect post and an imperfect post. They just care about the value of the information that they're getting. So never let perfection get in the way of publishing. Having more and more relevant content on your website is a lot more important than having perfect content on your website. Never let perfection get in the way of publishing. I've repeated this 3 times because we see attorneys struggle with this concept so incredibly often. Do not let this issue get in the way of you making more money, serving more clients. Now, how do you scale up content production? I assume you're a busy lawyer, and I assume that writing is not the most favorite thing in the world for you to do. How do you make sure that you produce more and more relevant content than your competition? In other words, how do you outcompete them with content? Well, there is a simple technique that we employ that helps lawyers create content incredibly fast. And here's how it works. Let's imagine that we start with a content strategy that incorporates all of the frequently asked questions by prospects and clients. This creates the framework for our future content. In that content strategy, you're going to have some pieces of content that are going to be considered pillar, longer form, and clusters, shorter form. We organize all of that in a spreadsheet and we prioritize what we're going to start on first. Next, instead of you writing this content, which is going to take forever, what we ask our clients to do, those who are open to it, is instead of writing all of that, they get a $10 tripod for their mobile device with a camera, and instead of writing it all, they sit down in front of their mobile device, and once a week, they record 4 or 5 videos. Those videos are usually short. This is a task that takes less than an hour, and in each one of those videos, they answer a question from the list, or they talk about a topic from the list. Then they share those recordings with us, and our content production team writes up content based on what the attorneys recorded in those videos. Our writers, this is what they do. They're incredibly fast and incredibly effective at writing content. They're going to do their absolute best, and they're pretty good at this. Not perfect, but pretty good at this. They're going to do their best at emulating your voice and making sure that your voice and your content comes through their written word. Then our clients review that content quickly. So once again, do not let perfection get in the way of publishing. Do not become an editor of that content. If there is something factually incorrect in that content, let us know in the comments, in the document. So those are online documents. And we'll fix whatever is factually incorrect. Everything else, just let us publish this content. That content is going to be optimized for search. It's going to be much faster, much more efficient than if you write that content or if you become the editor-in-chief for all of your content. Your goal and your focus should be on serving as many people as possible who need this information, and in the process, generating more and more opportunities to serve people and generating more and more revenue for your law firm. So do it this way. The alternative to do it this way is, well, of course, creating content on your own. Slow, painful, expensive, does not produce results fast, if any. Spare yourself from this. Make sure that your high-performance marketing company, like ours, actually produces all of that content for you. It will be faster, it will deliver better results, much cheaper than if you do it. Your plan of action, once you get on this path, is make sure that your marketing company actually has a content production team that knows how to create and publish and optimize content for search so that you get the most amount of relevant traffic as fast as humanly possible. If you think that your marketing team, or you do not have a marketing team, but if you think that your marketing team is not up to the task, down below in the post, download the How to Pick the Best Marketing Company. It's a checklist for your law firm. Go through this checklist and start looking for a new marketing company. Do make sure to interview us. We're really good at this. Start interviewing marketing companies that will help you scale up your content production, get more people to your website, and help your law firm grow.